Okay, hello everybody. Hopefully I sound okay. It looks like everything is okay
Hello
here. So,
everybody.
and I on Wednesdays I try to when I'm here I try to come on earlier than I'm on right now. But sometimes time gets away from you, particularly whenever you're not exactly in a most linear kind of space itself. So I appreciate anybody that's able to jump on and talk with me, and we can hang out and all that. But there were a couple things in the last couple days that caught my eye, and I thought it was something that was pretty important, and I thought it was something that was really really interesting. And Chick brought up this idea of the white sun, which is like one of the most basic things for an ME. The white sun is well known. And hopefully everybody here is typing in the chat. Let me know if you can type. And hey, Buster, how's it going? All right, Dark Mara, how's it going? Good seeing everybody. Excellent. Glad to see everybody. All right, hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Dead GPK. Hello. All right, wonderful. I'm glad everything looks okay. Let me know if I sound okay and all that. So anyway, the Fool card. I was she sent it to me in a tweet, and it was part of another tweet stream that was going out that was incredibly interesting. And I will get, actually, I should give credit where credit is due with this, because it's from at Freighter IAO, all one word, and talking about the central axis of consciousness and the will of the white sun. And as we all know here, particularly on this channel, one of the big deals about the Mandela Effect early on that we all notice is the white sun, because we all remember a yellow sun, or reddish yellow sun. So I thought it was really interesting that it was in the tarot. I thought it was incredibly interesting that it was on the Fool card. So I wanted to read up on it, and I wanted to get the information out fast because it was so exciting to me that it was talking about the white sun. So it says about the iconography of it. It says here the Fool or the Jester, is one of the 78 cards in the tarot. In the occult tarot, it is one of the 22 major arcana, sometimes numbered as 0 the first or the 22nd the last. So it says here some really important stuff here. It says here the Fool is depicted usually as a beggar or a vagabond. The Fool wears ragged clothes and stockings without shoes, carries a stick on his back. He has what appears to be a feather in his hair. His unruly beard and feathers may relate to the tradition of the woodhouse or the wild man. Another early Italian image and related to the tradition is the first and lowest of the series of the so-called Tarocchi Mantigna. I probably butchered that. The series of prints containing images of social roles, allegorical figures, and classical deities begins with the Miserere, the depiction of a beggar leaning on a staff. So one of the more important points about the Fool card itself is the journey, the Fool's journey that the Fool takes. And I found that the most interesting part, actually. Let's see here. Let's hear here. Interpretations. In many esoteric systems of interpretation, the Fool is usually interpreted as the protagonist of a story, and the major arcana is the path the Fool takes through the great mysteries of life and the main human archetypes. The path is known traditionally as the Fool's journey, and it's usually introduce the meaning of major arcana cards to beginners. But I wanted to find here, it was talking about the fool being on the precipice of something major. And I thought that was so fitting to the audience that I'm talking about, because it was so powerful when they were talking about the journey itself and being on the precipice of something major. And I probably should have marked this here, actually. But it's late for me. I'm usually heading to bed right about now, so forgive me. Let's see. Yeah, that's interpretations. And it says here that he's on the fool's journey or the precipice. And the precipice usually has to do with esoteric meaning, or a jump forward, or the keeping of wisdom, and that the fool is willing to risk it, all of those things. Isn't that interesting? Because if you're in the Mandela Effect community, you have to think about what it is you think about, and the way in which you interpret the world around you, and how you understand the meaning of the world, and how it changes almost on a daily routine. And the way in which I'm starting to actually see the world actually is not day by day, it's almost shift by shift. So indeed, in a lot of ways, I'm on a precipice of something new. And in some weird ways, it's giving me the idea of a new paradigm in terms of understanding risk, in terms of understanding my environment, and in terms of understanding the parameters of what I would consider chaos. Because a long time ago, 2 years ago, I would have considered something like this confirmation, and though it would have been something important to me personally, it would have scared me quite a bit. And now it means almost nothing. Almost. But it means enough that I need to bring it to light. Here we go. The fool holds a white rose, a symbol of freedom from baser desires in one hand, and in the other a small bundle of possessions, representing untapped collective knowledge. Now, the collective knowledge part obviously is the most interesting part of this, because being on the precipice, I think, oftentimes, maybe in the Western tradition, I mean, that's all that I can speak for. Being on the precipice of something is always glorified. But if you think about it, every time you wake up in the morning and you go out to face the full world, you really are on the precipice of something major. That day, something could happen. And we've all had days like that where they ended in ways that just either amazed us or terrified us or horrified us. Or maybe a little bit of all of those mixed in together. But what's more interesting about the fool and the white sun is the untapped collective knowledge that this represents. And what's more interesting and more profound is I started to consciously think of things in less literal terms recently. I started to think of things in more terms of like bigger allegories. Like there's this, I didn't put it up on the screen, but I have it down in the description. It's a really interesting article from Nature, How Data Detectives Exposed Suspicious Medical Trials. And this also bleeds into a synchronicity I had watching another YouTube channel they were talking about uncovering thousands and thousands of papers that were peer-reviewed. And in academia, if you're peer-reviewed and published, that's pretty much is the bee's knees, and you can get away with pretty much anything you want. And at least that's how it's described to me. So they're finding out through all kinds of trials now that a lot of these peer reviews were faked, outright lied, or it was the buddy system or anything like that. So I just think it's so interesting that these things that we take as literal oftentimes, like saying that you're published and you've had a peer review for your paper and all of these other things, they seem to be part and parcel of all of those things that are kind of dissolving away. The hand of authority And each finger that it represents seems to be dislocating itself to the point to where each piece, each finger, and the center itself is sort of becoming its own entity, undoing itself, ungluing itself. And yet, as a lot of, particularly the YouTubers, including myself, talk about this hand of authority pushing down, in many ways, that's an indication. That's an indication of a death card, of a transition. But I'll take the white sun and the fool card, and having sort of that collective knowledge that we all have together. Because it's true, when you're an ME, it's very powerful, and it's very, very, very meaningful. But anyway, back to the article. This particular, I think he was an anesthesiologist. He found that a bit of data that was flying around, and it was clinical research data, I believe. And through some happenstance, you can read the article. I read it like yesterday or something, so I've forgotten the specifics of it. He read it, and the data was fudged essentially. So as a hobby after work, he was able to access other parts of clinical trials and data and all kinds of things that if you're a doctor, a medical doctor, you have access to. And he had access to all the background notes whenever they put together something like this. And it turned out that it was massive, large-scale fakes going on. Unbelievable proportions. So you have a dissolving consensus in this data that's happening right now. But see, unless you're really paying attention to it, it's just one separate piece of malfeasance that's happening. But if you see it in the broader notes, in the broader storyboard that's out there, clearly you can see that there's something else bigger and broader going on here. And, we were talking about the math problem just 2, 3, 4 days ago, something like that, this Saturday. It's what's today, Wednesday? And that too has to do with this idea that underlying all of the chaos and all of the noise could be something fundamental that's actually moving and changing. And indeed, I'll admit this is speculation and could be a stretch. What if he was uncovering so many papers? It was literally just hundreds of papers had to be recalled. And then it started off to where there was a whole board over. He analyzed over 5,000 trials. Different people from the Journal of Anesthesiology, which had published 12 of the papers that this guy Carlisle highlighted as, quote, problematic. So we had this massive reset inside the medical community, particularly inside of the anesthesia community, if that's even a thing, if they consider themselves a community, I suppose they would, all over the world, from Australia to Germany to Japan. So it was global. And suddenly the underlying data, but I think of our doctor, our Anon doctor, our palliative care doctor that comes on the show every now and then. And what happened to him? One day, he was a Harvard-educated doctor that was respected. He followed the law. He followed the data. He followed the instructions of what was supposed to be applied to a patient. Oftentimes, older patients that were in the end stages of life. And yet, he ended up in handcuffs. Now, it's worth mentioning that was the first, at least for us, for this community, for this channel, that was the first, step-toe in the sun of understanding that perhaps these Mandela effects are much more than just pop culture references. Indeed, the Mandela effects themselves are all data. And it's all allegory. And it's all related. And indeed, none of it is in a vacuum. None of it. And if that's the case, and none of it is in a vacuum, then indeed, the possibility of our doctor, the possibility of this math problem, the possibility of this Nature article, International Journal of Science, Nature, all of it could be related. All of it could be related because the underlying data, the underlying numbers themselves, and more importantly, the formulas themselves have changed right beneath our feet, and we didn't know it. They were Mandela affected. They were shifted. And what if there is an anesthesiologist in Japan or Canada and many in the United States or Japan, and at the time, and I'm not trying to exonerate these people. I don't know these people. I'm just saying, at some point there's so many points of data. When do you start saying, okay, I'm not jumping to conclusions. I'm starting to see a pattern here. And if you noticed early on in the Mandela Effect, there were waves. I always noticed that there were waves, and they seem to take on this form of like a theme. I always thought the Mandela Effect was kind of theme-oriented. And, of course, that could be once a person discovers. And yes, Data Junkie, I just pulled up the chat. I hope this has sounded okay this whole time. I'm so nervous about that with this new software. But it could be a crisis of ethics in every field, even science. Absolutely. The doctor that I interview and that I consult with in terms of changes to the body, he could be dishonest. I ultimately, I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that math problem doesn't know ethics. And the variables in that math problem doesn't know ethics or morals or understand dogma. And those calculators certainly don't. Glasses do influence our perception. So do lenses. And so, yes, exactly, Dark Wolf. It does come in waves. And this is probably the most troubling wave yet, actually, if you really think about it. Because what if this math problem, that was an easy one for people to find, there are more troubling formulas out there. There are more troubling formulas out there that are disrupting the data that scientists use, that mathematicians use, that any STEM, anybody. Actually, any of the humanities, anybody that uses any kind of statistics or any kind of anything. Engineering, right down to our cars working. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. And Buster and I were just talking about the webpage today. And by the way, we're putting together a Patreon that will put some content out there to help pay for the page. We got a real vision with this page that we hope everybody, and the idea of the page is that anybody and everybody can jump in. And that's the idea of the page. And one of the ideas we were talking about is having a chat where anybody can jump in. And sometimes, maybe there'll be mods there, sometimes not. I don't know how well that would actually work. But it's good stuff. It's great stuff. But anyway, it's just strange. And if you remember all of this again, I can't say it enough. It comes off that massive spike that we had. Right? We had that massive spike I thought it made me sick. It made me sick. I thought I was getting a cold or the flu. My bones hurt. My throat was sore. Very, very odd. Very odd. But the fool's journey, being on the precipice of something massive, and yet having a small bundle of possessions that represents the untapped collective knowledge. And that, I've never been very materialistic in terms of, I know we talk about materialism in terms of a religious understanding, a philosophical understanding, but in terms of like materialism as in, pursuing expensive cars or big houses or things like that. It's never really been. I think I pursued more security. I would say is like something, and because with that kind of security, you're able to do these kinds of expeditions. I think is what I value personally. But I like that idea of the fool, and immediately, outwardly, you're a fool. You're called a fool. Here it is. The fool is shown as a young man walking unknowingly towards the brink of a precipice. And he has a small dog. And I like the idea of the white rose, a symbol of freedom from the baser desires. Because it's freedom from those baser desires that frees you up to pursue other things. If you're not constantly craving, appetites of your flesh, then obviously you can indulge the mind. You can indulge the spirit. You can indulge those other kinds of things. I think certainly it may help to get those appetites out when you're much younger. And I thank you, Dark Wolf. I appreciate that. I think it was John Waters, the director, and he was talking about, I think he was talking about drugs. He said, you either grow out of them or you die. And I thought that was very basic and yet incredibly profound. And it meant a lot more than just literally that. Again, we're talking in that realm again of metaphor, allegory. Jeremy said he just got the notification just now. I guess that's an upgrade. I appreciate you letting me know, Jeremy. But the fool, I like that. Outwardly poor. Someone that is not taken seriously. And yet has freedom from baser desires. And has untapped collective knowledge within the only possession that the fool has, and is always walking unknowingly towards the brink of a precipice. So in a lot of ways, I could be cheesy and say everyone's a bit of a fool, because everyone has a bit of that in them. And that's true to a certain extent. But when you apply that to our case, you apply that to this community, to this channel, to this crew, it means a lot more. It's more profound. And I'm wondering, too, if it's a good thing that these kinds of changes, they're happening in a way that you have to really pay attention now. You really have to deeply understand what's happening and be able to put this all together. I don't personally think that there's a coincidence that we had the math problem this week. Now we're talking about data under the microscope. Medical data, incredibly, it's just dangerous, and it's everything that matters. It's everything that matters. And yet, here it is. And what if it's all related? And what if, just imagine that. What if, instead of faking this all of these papers, that all the anesthesiologists of note that were writing papers to advance the science and the understanding and the art of anesthesiology, and a way to keep a human being from dying while being under anesthesia. That's a terrifying thought. I've been to surgery where I had to go under more than once. And it's a terrifying thought that if they took my weight or whatever it may be, my age, and if they were dishonest and they just wanted to publish a paper, they could have a variable off somewhere, and I could die on the operating table. Now, do you want to be in a world where that's the case, or do you want to be in a world where the math is changing Because it's one or the other. Because this has clearly uncovered something very unsettling. And the thing about it is, it's in the past, it's already done, so it doesn't matter. In fact, this is July 23rd, 2019. So it doesn't matter. This is not about worrying about the future. This is done and over with. This has already happened. And I sort of thought about this, but I never brought it up because I never wanted to be one of those kinds of channels. But now that it's already done and over with and already reported on, and I can share it in the chat as well. But, what it's all about now is looking at it in a new way and not just taking things completely literally. What if some of these scientists and doctors, what if they were honest? And just like that math problem, we had a bit of dissolving consensus going on. Or just like the doctor that helps this channel out, that I personally believe him. What if the same thing happened to him? And like he said, it wasn't the molecular structure of the drugs that he was dispensing that changed. It was the human body that's changed. And more clinicians that stay on, they too agree with this doctor, but they didn't get marched out in handcuffs, which is terrifying. That there's so much more out there. I don't know. So it's something worth thinking about. It's something I thought about. When I saw this article, I just had to talk about it. I thought it was incredibly important. And getting on to another article that is very interesting is, hopefully this is not noisy for you guys. If it's noisy, let me know. I'm still learning this. I don't usually do coast to coast, but I wanted to talk about these ghost cities, and hopefully this isn't your first exposure to them. You can find them. They're always out. It's just that this one just happened again in China. And they happen a lot of times in China. And it's actually an incredibly eerie article because it parrots a lot of the things that we talk about in terms of the multidimensional universe, in terms of the CIA gateway process, all of those other things. It says here, a spellbinding video out of China shows, they call it an optical illusion, which makes it seem as if a massive ghost city has appeared on a lake. The remarkable scene reportedly unfolded at Hong's Lake in the city of Heoan on Sunday afternoon, to the amazement of residents who caught the sight of the Mirage, which lasted for a whopping 40 minutes. As luck would have it, a photographer was at the site hoping to snap some shots of the sunset, wound up capturing some of this tremendous footage. It went viral in China on social media. And here's the kicker. A number of what are described as, quote, ancient buildings featuring, quote, ancient octagonal towers, city walls, and residential houses can be seen on the horizon along with the structures. There's also wind turbines, which were apparently part of this amazing mirage. The sheer size and complexity of the illusion may be best appreciated because this scene goes shockingly barren afterwards. And the only reason why I'm using this rather than, and I know one of the ethos I go by is that I try to keep it completely and totally mainstream. That's not a knock on Coast to Coast. It's just what I want to do is avoid any kind of scrutiny or anything else is what I want to avoid. But this has happened so many times, I figured, this is a great chance to talk about this. That, the ideas we talk about here, and where we have like a Skinwalker Ranch where they say the veil is thin. You have areas of the world where the veil is incredibly thin. But I started to think about it too. There could be much more to the story than just this quote-unquote mirage of seeing a ghost city that apparently does not exist, by the way. when they see these ghost cities before, and there's been reports on it, even on mainstream websites and newspapers, they take like the pictures and they try to find something that it would be the Mirage would be bouncing off of in real life, and they can't find it. Nothing like that exists. And there was one recently in China in the clouds. It looked like a Steve Turner. Thank you so much. We all need to eat right and work out. We need to be strong for whatever's coming. Absolutely. Steve, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I totally, I take all kinds of different supplements in the morning and stuff like that. And don't worry, I'm not going that route, like trying to, but I'm just saying that I too, I try to do that. But the point of why I pay attention to these ghost cities so much in the clouds and in the sky is that they actually have taken pictures of these ghost cities and they've tried to find them. Like most mirages, like they talk about the Mirage of Chicago, and you can see it across the Great Lakes. Some people use it as a reason for FE, and then other people take it as to prove that FE doesn't exist. Just looked it up, and National Geographic is even covering it, says Jeremy. Excellent, thank you, sir. So there you go. It happens all the time. But the problem is when they try to find the cities that match, at least everything I've read up to this point. I didn't know the National Geographic covered it now. Ooh, that's awesome. I'll have to look that up, Jeremy. Thank you. But yeah, the magnesium. Dark Wolf. Whenever you go through a really hard shift, it helps with the magnesium. I also pop Airborne, and I pop lots of like chewable zinc tablets. It's from 2015. Excellent. So this has been going on a while. So, no, but anyway, so you have these cities that appear in the sky, and they've tried to compare them to real life cities, because if it's a mirage, it has to be reflecting off of something. And again, I talk about how Chicago is reflected off of the lake. And the article is titled China's Floating City and the Science of Mirages. Exactly. All these mirage cities. Turmeric. Interesting. Huh. I'll have to look that up, Steve. Thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll look it up with the title. Sure. China's Floating City and the Science of Mirages. Thank you, sir. China's Floating City and the Science of Mirages. So, the point being is, China's Floating City. You should be able to find them, right? And they can't. And they can't. So, what's that all about? Here we go. Yep, National Geographic. I'm so afraid to click this thing that it's going to go bonkers. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to turn down the desktop audio. Hey, can you guys still hear me? I'm turning down the desktop audio. Let me know if you can still hear me. So, maybe that would help if this thing gets noisy. That's freaky. So cool. Oh, see, you're goading me. I've got to see this. Oh gosh. Hopefully it doesn't make any noise. Is that blowing you guys' ears out? Because I will turn it right off. Let me know. Is it blowing your ears out? Watch out with the sound, and I'll take it off. Okay, so I took off the sound. So check this out. I'll be able to at least give you the copy here. There you go. Right in the chat. So there you go. Don't hear it? Oh, you guys are okay? Oh, you didn't hear it. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So we have it with National Geographic. We have it all over the place. Now, naturally, it's a mirage. So what do you think? Kind of strange, right? I think it has to do. If they would have been able to connect the cities and the geography and the cityscape and the skyline with something, it is a dimensional mirage. I think it's from like our neighbors, the next dimension over. A foretelling of the future, perhaps. Yeah, camera obscura in dimensions 5D, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah, I think the city exists in another dimension, and I'm I've seen this now for long enough. I'm not as hey Stacy, I'm not as worried anymore. And like I said, you get enough of these small articles, and you do it now, over 2 years. And we've collected literally a library, our little digital Alexandria library. And Jeremy is saying so crazy, definitely seems like we've got universes passing through one another or colliding. Exactly. And something is going on. Something is happening. Right. I've heard the Project Bluebeam. That's the only thing that we've had as a counter argument. Now, is Project Bluebeam real? Now, we know these cities are real because everybody from Coast to Coast and National Geographic is talking about them. We know that the cityscapes and the skylines don't match anything on Earth. And trust me, they looked for it. And I don't know. I know there was something in, I believe it was Korea. It was a baseball game or something, and they had something that was Bluebeam-esque, and it was a dragon flying through the stadium, and I never spoke about it or pasted it anywhere because I couldn't figure out if it was real or not. But I mean, I'll just talk about it here just really quick. So if the technology's there, well, for one thing, I would have to ask for a Project Bluebeam. I would imagine that what I saw in the stadium would be more advanced than this. And this just looks haunting. I would imagine a Project Bluebeam would be more, like, I don't know. I just, in my head, this doesn't strike me as that. And I don't see the purpose in it. I wouldn't see the purpose. With the Project Bluebeam, I would see a purpose in seeing an alien craft. Oh yeah, Melancholia. Well, then I won't ruin it for you, Jeremy. Yes, Project Bluebeam is real. I've heard about it since childhood, and I'm 40. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to ruffle anyone's feathers about Project Bluebeam. Yeah, Angeli, I've seen Melancholia as well. It's a brilliant movie. Brilliant movie. And that's fine about Bluebeam, but that's the only answer that we have other than it being... It can't be a mirage because a mirage has to be a reflection of something that's real. And if you go back, I guess now to 2015, there's countless pictures of these cities in the clouds, and they don't match, and they look hauntingly different than anything on this planet. And I wouldn't really, if it was Bluebeam, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't understand what the purpose would be because it doesn't look really, it doesn't seem very Bluebeam-esque, Project Bluebeam had only one goal, creating distraction. Well, assuming it exists, and I will for the sake of this argument, but I'm still going under the idea that I need to have something official show it to me, and I'm trying to abandon the traditional fringe narratives that are out there because I think that we've all worked ourselves trying to be free thinkers. We've worked ourselves into a ditch where we're really following our own biases and dogmas that we look down on people and we try to escape from. And I think some of these things that we have repeated over and over and over and over again, they become these dogmas. And I have never seen any proof of Bluebeam. I know people sounded super official on YouTube, and they spoke with that voice that was like super official. But, with Buster, myself, and Chick, we actually have .gov. We go into the National Archives. We have like real FOIA requests. So, I'm not doing that to troll anyone or to ruffle anyone's feathers. And for heaven's sakes, I would love to see something that was Bluebeam-esque on paper from a .gov that was a FOIA request, where lawyers had to just jar it from their hands. They just tore it from their hands and they didn't want it to let it go. I would love something like, or they buried it like they did with Gateway. Oh, thank you, Stacy. They buried it in Gateway with like 1.7 million other. Yeah, going from the holographic Tupac concert to these cities in the sky, that's kind of a leap, but good point, Jeremy. But sometimes don't you just get a feeling, just the gut feeling, and take a look at those. Give yourself like a half hour and check out some of these cities. They're just creepy. And they don't match anything. And what would be the purpose? Just to prove you could do it? Because someone mentioned I would do like religious icons. I would do UFOs invading. I would project aircraft, that armies that didn't exist. Just some humdrum skyline that just looks sort of dystopian. I guess there could be a point to that, to some kind of social engineering maybe. But I don't like that we default to that always. Because really what you're doing is you're not empowering yourself, you're empowering the government. They can do everything. And from a lot of the documents we're reading, that is not the case. They want you to think that, so you just give up immediately, go, they can do everything. Everything that goes wrong in my life, they can do. Every Mirage or one of these ghost cities, they can do. But I'm too busy playing that full card, and I'm on the precipice of something. Now, I will say, obviously, that we have a lot of documents that we've talked about before. Certainly the government is interested in these kinds of alternative technologies. And certainly they've been working on it for a very long time. But there also could be as well that it was the government's fault that they've used these alternative technologies to the point to where we've inadvertently, or maybe perhaps we did it on purpose for reasons we can't fathom, created, thin parts of the veil. We've thinned the veil on purpose to create these kinds of mirages. Maybe perhaps to shuttle something to the next dimension over. To use it as a means of transportation, a means of time travel, a means of dimension travel. It could be a million different things. And just like you got to the point where you were free-spirited and free-minded enough and independent-minded enough to say that I'm willing to take the leap to believe in Bluebeam, would you be able to go farther to entertain the idea that there could be alternative technologies that we've proven to you that the government is working on and they're interested in? Whether they're private contractors or government contractors, would you be able to entertain the fact that these cities may be side effects of some of those technologies, and it wasn't on purpose? Just like we see often the fallout that we have from all kinds of technologies that are right in the public sphere. Something as simple as getting that Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer from that not bug spray, it was a weed spray. That was a negative side effect on the population, and yet that spray, I don't remember the name of it. It's not coming to mind. It's on the shelves everywhere still. We know tobacco still kills people. And yeah, this is on the heels of Stranger Things and Mirror World, and all of those things dealing with the multidimensional thing. Russian doll, all of those things. All of it, like I said, it does two things. It prepares you and it inoculates you. So it's very, very strange, these things. Okay, so the super chats tonight, thank you so much, everyone. Can we get some thumbs up? We have almost 100 watching. If we could get more thumbs up, that'd be wonderful. We're starting to put the Patreon together. Hopefully that'll speed up the process for getting this awesome webpage. We have different visions. It'll be a place of our own, kingdom of our own. Go to Dark Wolf. He has the Mandela Effect conference coming up for the West Coast. It's in Iowa. If you want to plug that now, Dark Wolf, let me know before I'm off the air, and I'll say it for people. And it'll be spectacular. And it's great that you can be around other folks that believe what you believe. And I think it's kind of great. Idaho. Thank you, Dark Wolf. And you had a guest speaker, right? Like a really special guest speaker. Ketchum Valley, Idaho. Yes, exactly. But even Jennifer, those companies you mentioned, they go all the way back to IG Farben. Check that one out. That one goes deep and far, man. I believe you, Andy. Fear is the cancer. Absolutely. If you read the Gateway document, you don't know how true that is and how literal that is. All right, so I'm getting out of here. Get more thumbs up in the future too. Anybody listening in the future, that'd be wonderful. So thank you everyone for coming out on such an odd hour, on an odd day. We have more in the description for you to check out if you like. Obviously, this also spreads into other videos on YouTube, and now we have the National Geographic. Actually, we have a lot of articles talking about these mirage cities. Coincidence? Is it a mirage? Can it be a mirage if it doesn't actually exist in the quote-unquote real world? I don't know. Don't know. All right, everybody. I will see if I don't talk to you sooner. Saturday's always just around the corner with the Lost and Found bin, 4:30 Eastern. Just like the little scroll thing down below there. We're starting to get really good at this technology thing. So tell everybody, share this, tell your friends about it. Tell your enemies about it. Tell anybody about it. Tell random people on the bus about it. When you're at traffic, unroll your window. Wave at the other person. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. All right. Anyway, I'm getting slap happy. All right, everybody. I'll see you. Bye.